I'm very well. How are you? Hola.
Hola, I'm great. Where are you, geographically speaking?
I'm in Dublin,
Oh,
Ireland.
you're in Dublin. Fantastic. So I'm in Mexico.
Yes, this is my home of the last 38 years I've lived here.
Oh, really? I think the last time I was in Ireland, I interviewed Dolores O'Riordan from the Cranberries, and
Hmm.
I was in Limerick.
Right. Yeah, that's where she was from, I believe. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just on the outskirts of Dublin, and geographically speaking, 10 minutes from Adam Clayton and 20 minutes from the edge of Bono.
But you were born in Sheffield, in England.
I
So
was,
why
yeah, but I
did you
have lived.
decide to move to
Yeah,
to
I haven't
Ireland?
lived I haven't lived in Sheffield since 1981. Um, I moved to London for best part of about 3 years. And then I moved to the outskirts of London and we were working in Ireland, but my main residence was in London. And just started to realize over a 6 month period of working here that I actually preferred living here than I'd preferred living on the outskirts of London. Um, I just, in that 6 months that we were here to work on what was the Hysteria album, I met so many people that I would never have had the chance to meet in London because it's such a big city. You might cross paths with people, but you'll never see them again. Dublin is a capital city, but it's a lot smaller. It's more like Sheffield, but Sheffield by the sea, if you like. And so you would bump into people and then you'd see them again a week later because it's a very small environment. There were certain places where everybody kind of all gravitated towards. And I made some lifelong friends in that first 6 months that we were here. And I kind of never left.
That is so cool. So
Mm.
did you marry an Irish woman?
I did once, but I'm not married to her anymore. That was many, many, many years ago. My wife of 18 years is actually American, but we live here together. We do spend a little bit of time in the States occasionally, especially when I'm working over there, of course. But for the most part, this is where I live. Yeah.
No, and now I'm so curious. And when I tell you a story, you will understand why. But did you meet? Was she a fan?
No, no, no. God, no, no. I don't think that it ever works out if you marry a fan. I think maybe on the odd occasion, I believe Frank Zappa married a
A
grouper,
fan.
from what I'm told, or at least a fan. But for the most part, I don't think that's ever going to work because it's just a kind of it's an uneven balance from day one that there's going to be somebody that's like looking up to some rock star, whether it be a guy looking up to a girl or a girl looking up to a guy, it doesn't matter. No, we were equals. We worked together, and we just got to know each other socially a long time before we got together as lovers, as you might want to call it.
So I have to tell you the most amazing story. So I've been doing radio since I was 19. And my big obsession about doing radio since I was 12 was I was obsessed with music. Now I'm 55, but music was my life. And the only thing I wanted to do, and the reason why I dropped out of college, is because I wanted to play music on the radio.
Wow.
So I probably started in 1989. So
Good.
one of the songs that I was absolutely obsessed with was Photograph from 1983.
Mhm.
And I remember, and I don't know if you're going to remember this visit, but we heard, and this is like when there's no internet, there's no cell phones, there's nothing. We would just hear it from friends that Joe Elliott and Def Leppard were coming to Mexico. And you were going to go to this record store that I believe was called like Sorba Records to sign records. Okay. So obviously, all my friends and me were like, okay, so how should we dress? And how should we look? How can we grab, Joe's attention? Maybe we'll get a picture. Maybe, he'll like us and we can have a relationship. So I was probably like maybe 15, 16. Okay. So you came to that record store, you signed my record. And after that, I think you must have gotten in a car with the band and you were leaving. So my friends and I were running behind your car in the parking lot. And I literally, the heel of my shoe came off and I was running with one heel and barefoot with the other. And this was, Joe, the 80s. So it took me basically almost 35 years to get to talk to you.
What a story. Oh my goodness. Well, I thank you for your patience, and you're still here, and you don't look a day over 25. I don't know how you do it, but there you go.
All my career, everything I've done, all the people I've interviewed was just to sit down and talk to you.
Well, I'm sorry we couldn't do it in person, but I'm very happy to be here now, all these years later.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the 80s, which is for me the best decade, which is for you the favorite decade?
Yes, that's a really interesting point, because we've spent our entire career having to defend the 80s against people that grew up in the 60s or the 70s. And like we did, in fairness, but they didn't seem to be able to differentiate between what you might call progress and what they would call not as good as the decade before. I kind of half understand it from a certain age. I think it depends how old you are. If you were, 10 years younger, you'd be saying it was the 90s. And if you were 10 years older, you'd be saying it was the 70s. I think it depends when you actually become musically aware. That becomes your decade. So for me, I was born in 1959. I was singing along with the Beatles in 1963 as a 4-year-old kid. And then, I'm 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and I'm starting to fall in love with music by the Kinks and the Who and the Rolling Stones. And then when glam rock came along, and I mean the British glam rock of the early 70s, T-Rex, David Bowie, Sweet, Slade, Queen, that's when I really cemented my love of music. So as much as I was, and I still am, a huge fan of bands like the Who and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin, they were just a little before I was musically mature, if you like. I latched onto bands like Roxy Music and Bowie and T-Rex when I was about 12 years old, and they became my band. So for me, it's the 70s, and it always will be. But I have an amazing respect for the 60s, because there's some fantastic music came out in the 60s, even the 50s. But the 80s are great for our kids that grew up watching us, that are 10 years younger than we are. 80s is their thing. Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Bon Jovi, U2, Depeche Mode, Duran Duran. Doesn't matter whether it's pop, rock, hard rock. There's something for everybody. Peter Gabriel, Kate Bush. There's some fantastic 80s music. There really is.
I think that my music awareness came when I was probably 9 years old. And you're not going to believe the first thing I bought. And I think that that's one of the reasons in my music taste, there's so much of a Black influence, which was George Benson, Give Me the Night, when I was 9 years old. Remember that album, which was fantastic?
I remember the song, yeah.
Yeah, but then I have 3 older brothers and sisters. So then I had this second phase, which was a lot of progressive rock, which was Genesis and Rush and Marillion, which I would have thought that you heard as well.
Of course, I heard all those bands. And like it's interesting that you say you had this second kind of window, second generation.
Yeah.
I started in 72. I always put that down as my ground zero year. There was some stuff in 71 and obviously some amazing stuff beforehand. But when I really just gelled, it was 72. It was Bowie. It was Queen and Slade and Sweet and all this great music that came out in 1972. But then again in 1976, when punk came along with the Pistols and the Clash and the Stranglers and the Damned, I was 16 and really thought that this was a whole new beginning for music, because these kids genuinely couldn't play or sing, but it gave people like me hope that if they can do it, so can I. I was never going to be somebody that could follow in the footsteps of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, or Genesis, or Supertramp, where there was such, yes, for example, incredible musicianship, was never in my bag. I was much more of somebody who just wanted to enjoy the journey of being involved in a rock band, the way that Ray Davies was in the Kinks, or Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend in the Who. Well, you didn't have to be fantastically musical to make a great noise, and punk really kind of sold that idea to me.
Whether
it be George Benson or whether it be the Sex Pistols, I've always believed in the Miles Davis statement that there's only two kinds of music, good and bad.
Exactly. Totally agree with you. Yeah, but I think that most probably, because I never became a singer, and trust me, I wish I would have, but I think that probably what you grow up listening to is what ends up shaping what you're going to sound like. So, many years ago in that, gym in school, when you decided to create this band, what did you want to sound like?
Back then, anything. It didn't matter, because you're kind of fumbling in the dark. It's like losing your virginity. It's not necessarily pleasant, but you got to do it one day. You know what I mean? And so, you form a band and you're really not sure what direction it's going to go in. Somebody says, we're going to put this rock band together. You jump at it. If somebody had come to me and said, we're going to put a band together that sounds like the Human League, I may well have jumped at that too. I might not have lasted very long, but I was always into the rock aspect of music. So, and I kind of always knew straight away that I could sing a bit, but I was never going to be Paul Rodgers. I was never going to be Lou Gramm from Foreigner, or any of these people that can sing what we like to say.
Oh my God, Foreigner!
But, Lou Gramm had a fantastic voice, whereas I was really impressed with people that, on a technical level, couldn't sing very well, which is people like Mick Jagger, Alice Cooper, a gentleman called Gary Holton, who was in a band called the Heavy Metal Kids. Huge fan of John Lydon. I think he expresses himself within Public Image or Sex Pistols fantastically well. Joe Strummer from The Clash. These people impressed me more than the singer from Kansas or the singer from Toto, because they had limitations from a singing point of view. So they had to express better. They had to write better. Bob Dylan can't sing, but what a writer, know. And my all-time hero is Ian Hunter from Mob the Hoople. He's not got a classically trained voice, but the way he expresses himself as a singer is stunning. And to me, that has always been more important, to listen to Alice Cooper or Ozzy Osbourne kind of narrate a lyric rather than singing it like a choir boy. It's really, that essence of singing has never been important to me. So I just wanted to sound like me. Yeah. But I had to develop who I am. So I'm a hybrid of everything I liked. A little bit of Bowie, a little bit of Bolan, a lot of Jagger, and people like that just express themselves fantastically well, as opposed to being pinpoint accurate with every note that they sing. That to me is muzak, not music.
Muzak. So it was Photograph in 1983 was what I tell you again, that was my obsession. And by the way, just to hit that key was so difficult, even though we're so young and our voices, we're so infantile. It was a hard key. I don't want you.
It still is a high key. And I'm now 40 years older than I was when we originally recorded that song. It doesn't get easy. There's very few singers that I can think of that sound the same as they always did.
Do you continue singing that song in the same key? Oh my God.
Well, actually, we always play a semitone down live for everything, because all our backing vocals are so high. That semitone gives the guitars more power, but it also saves us canceling shows because we just sing just a tiny bit lower. But the only singers that I know of really that still sound as good now as they ever did is Steven Tyler.
Yeah.
When I come to singing rock music, Steven Tyler from Aerosmith and Sammy Hagar. Sammy Hagar is 72 years old and still sounds like he did on the first Montrose album. Now, in a different form of music, Simon Le Bon still sounds good. Bono sounds great. Jim Kerr from Simple Minds sounds fantastic. But
how does John Bon Jovi sound? I wonder. Haven't heard him in a while.
John's had some throat issues, which he's dealt with, and he'll be back, no problem. Bryan Adams sounds great. You know, some of these people, they're blessed. Well, the rest of us have to work really hard to maintain that.
Okay, this I remember trying to figure out what it said, and I'm sure that you remember that if you wanted to learn a song, which was my obsession, you would like do rewind, play, and sometimes we would take out the songs phonetically. I remember that song from Nina. I remember 99 Luftballons, which was in German. And then I remember the Gunther Glieben, Glauten, Globen.
Yep, which not German, even though it sounds like it is, you know.
It sounded German.
Some guy about 40 years ago, or 35 years ago, actually wrote an article saying that as far as he's concerned, it is German for running through the forest silently. Which it isn't, but my God, what a story, you know. Yeah, that was Cabin Fever. That whole line was, I was messing about in the studio and it was there as a timekeeper. It was a space saver in a song that they didn't have any lyrics written. And we just got so used to it while we were recording that when we got to the end of the process of making that record, it stuck with us as an in-joke.
Yeah.
And one of us, I don't remember who, suggested should just glue it onto the front of the song. So we did, and a legend was born, you know.
Gunther Glieben, Glauten, Globen. Did you ever think, you know, maybe this is over? Because I mean, there's so many bands from the 80s that just absolutely disappeared. You know, they parted ways or they were in a fight and they didn't do anything together again. There were so many bands, which was obviously not your case. We called it magic bands that appeared and disappeared as fast. Let me do you a music trivia. Tell me the name of the band that sang just one hit wonder, and the song was called What About Me? What about me? It isn't fair. I've had enough now. You don't remember? Moving Pictures, Joe.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember the band, but I don't remember the song. But I've got 7-inch singles in a cardboard box over there. And I've got dozens and dozens of one-hit wonders. And I love them. I've actually put a playlist together, what's called few hit wonders. So if they've had 1 or 2 hits, they're in there. So you've got things like My Sharon. In the UK at least, Radar Love by Golden Earring. Run 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 by a band called Jojo Gunn. There was Black Betty by American Ram Jam. There's Play That Funky Music, White Boy by Wild Cherry. There's loads of great songs that, you know, they only ever had the one hit, you know. And I'm sure that their fans would get on internet and go, actually, they had loads of better songs or they had more songs, but they weren't genuinely hits. You know?
Yeah. So obviously you had so many hits, but was there a point where you thought, well, maybe this is over? So what am I going to do for a living?
It never felt like it was over. We went through a period where it was really difficult, but I don't think we ever got close to splitting up. There was never any dissent within the band to go, one of us is trying to leave and the other 4 trying to stop him. There's been moments where we've all gone, I don't want to do this anymore. But it's normally after something extremely traumatic, like when Steve died. For 2 or 3 days, you don't want to go on, you know. But then reality kicks in and you're like, well, what would I do instead of doing this? There's so many bands have survived those kind of situations, whether it be the Rolling Stones. I mean, there's just there's very few bands.
I remember
I've got the lineup of like U2, though they've never had a lineup change.
Yeah.
There's very,
Yeah.
very few of those bands around.
I remember when I heard the news about Rick's accident, and I was like, truly, I felt it to heart.
Yeah, well, you can imagine what it was like internally within the band. I mean, Rick didn't know anything about it. He was barely conscious. He was in a coma for a long, long time before he came out and realized he'd lost his arm. Meanwhile, we were all sitting around going, now what? You know, I mean, you can't really even think about, say, kicking your drummer out because he has an accident. We never thought that anyway, but it was just something that never crossed our mind, even though we had, within 48 hours of it happening, we had drummers phoning up going, hey man, I'm free. And you can imagine what we said back to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was always up to Rick whether he carried on or not, you know. And when he first said, I can do this, we actually thought he was, you know, there was the drugs talking, but he proved everybody completely wrong. That it did doubt him, but we didn't doubt him once he'd said it and he looked at us and said, I can do this. We said, fine, it's up to you whether you're in this band or not up to us. So, and he's still here now. So yeah, it was a tough one.
I cannot wait to see you guys. So I literally follow you on Instagram. So I keep track of what you're doing, where you're going, where you're singing. So I'm happy that you said that as well. But everybody can check the dates at defleppard.com or Def Leppard in Instagram, where I see you post that all the time. Joe, it has been a pleasure talking to you.
You too.
Thank you so much. We will see you soon. Thank you, Joe. Great to meet you.
Adios.
Adios.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.